I was looking into this bug with previewing tokens, and I found that webreplay was really helpful when it came to understanding what was happening. So I thought I'd just make a quick video and share it. The basic gist of it is that it's fine to hover on elements outside the debug line, but if you hover on an element inside the debug line, then things get weird. So if I just step down, we get the pop-up, that's fine, but we don't get the highlight. You get the highlight here, I guess, and more stuff, but you don't get it if you're hovering somewhere inside here. So I want to understand why that was, and I was working on this with David, and we dug into it, and we had tons of theories, but until we actually looked at what was happening with webreplay, it was really hard to understand. So I made this quick recording, and if we drill into it a bit, I guess I could focus on add selection. I just hovered on a bunch of tokens, this, listen to, this, listen to, and I wanted to see what was happening. So if we jump to the last one, this listen to, here we are. We notice that you can see the blue background for the debug line, and if we step forward, we're in the process of showing the yellow pop-up. So the yellow highlight shows up for listen to, and if we step forward, it doesn't matter, but it goes away when it comes time to clear the debug line. And by the way, there's no reason why hovering on a preview element should actually clear the debug line. So immediately, this is probably a sign that there's something going wrong. So let's jump over here. So we jump to clear debug line, which came after add selection, and the debug line's gone, and the yellow pop-up's gone. And then if we fast forward a bit further to set debug line, the debug line is back, but the yellow pop-up is gone. So the first thing that we found using webreplay was that the yellow pop-up was successfully being shown, but the process of updating the debug line was removing it. And I guess this is something that we could have figured out fairly easily if we had set the breakpoints in the right way. So we had a breakpoint in this update highlight function, and then another in clear debug line, and then another in set debug line. But just easily being able to jump between them showed us something that was useful. Going a bit further in, when we looked at clear debug line, our initial theory was that it was the act of updating these classes, like remove line class, which was the issue. Okay, so we were removing the new debug line class. And if we go forward, what just happened here? So we rewind, we can see that it had an effect. The class is what is controlling these borders. I can flip forward, the borders are gone. If we go back, the borders are there. But the highlight's not there. So that was really weird. It was like, okay, well, clear debug line is important, but maybe it's not the yellow preview. We should look further into what else can we touch on the debug line. So that's where we were at until we started stepping backwards. And as we were doing that, we ran into this call, this debug expression up here. And that's when we realized that the yellow preview is actually being associated with the debug expression, which is that blue background and probably some spans and other DOM elements that for each token. And that's the call that was affecting it, because on line 92 we have the yellow preview, and on line 96 we just don't. And what's so cool about this is, again, enough breakpoints, and we could have seen what was happening going forward, but it's really much easier to have a case that's reproduced and then explore and narrow down the issue in real time without having to cover, because these functions are called all the time and the timing can be really hard to figure out. So having one case that's not changing and then just narrowing your search window made it really much easier to understand why this happened. So let me show you one more example. If we go up here, I think add selection for this will be one case where we're hovering on something outside the debug line. So let's see, if we step forward. Nope, that's also the debug line. Let's go forward another one. Maybe this listen to. Yeah, okay. So this is a case where we've hovered on a token that's outside the debug line. And I wanted to understand why clear debug line wasn't removing the yellow pop. Like, again, we're calling the same function, clear debug line. It's doing the same thing as before, but for some reason that yellow box is spared the same treatment. So if we step back, we see on line 99, we're about to remove the line classes for the debug line. Or actually, I guess we could say we step back, we now see them and we're about to remove them, right? Like if we go forward, they're gone. Not a big deal, I guess. And if we go back to 92, now we have the debug line, the debug expression, and we have the line classes for the debug line, which is where we are before anything happens in clear debug line. And what I realized when I was playing with this, and I don't know if I would have figured this out without seeing the whole thing and going back and forward, was, of course, it's fine to clear the debug expression in this case, because the yellow box, the preview box, is outside of that debug expression. It's on line 36, and the debug expression is 35, so we can blow away all the DOM in the debug expression on line 35, and it's totally safe. So I say this now, and it seems obvious, but at the time it was a huge aha. The other thing that David and I wanted to figure out was, why is debug line updating at all? You have this React component here. It's a component, it's not a pure component, so maybe it's being updated too aggressively. What's going on here? So the difference between a pure component and a component is that with a pure component, it's not going to update if the properties are identical. So if the properties haven't changed, we're not going to update. But if it's a component and all the properties are the same, it might update and cause these like spurious renders. So I started looking at the props. I just did this.props here, and they're a bunch. And then I wanted to narrow it down, so I was doing this dot y. You know, is that equal to prev props.y? Yes. This dot props.source, is that equal to prev? Maybe. Yes. This dot props.frame, is that equal to previous props.frame? No. Okay. So that clued us into the fact that this component was being updated too aggressively, and the primary reason it was being updated too aggressively was that the frame was different, it's a different entity. But the funny thing was, when we actually looked at the frame, it was one of those cases where it's like the same object. You know, if we did like a string comparison, nothing had changed. It's just a different identity, and React works best with object identity comparisons because they're cheaper. So we wanted to know why the frame was changing, even though the frame identity was changing, even though the frame's properties were identical. So we were able to go back to map state to props, which is outside the call stack because things are done asynchronously. Oops, gotta remove some of these now. So we can rewind to the last map state to props, and that's going to give us the frame that's calculated. And if we looked at get visible selected frame, which is in selectors pause. Oops. Let me just rewind to that. And we can take a look at the selected frames that are coming in here, or the thread. The most important thing is that selected frames comes from get selected frames, which is right up here. And get selected frames was using a selector that was really, really broad, stage.pause. And the problem with stage.pause is if that data changes, if anything the pause reducer changes, it's going to try to update, which is pretty lame. So like, it's a really broad filter. And if we go back to the DebugLine component, I forgot to show you the best thing. If we go back to the DebugLine component, and we actually look at the call stack here, we'll see that we have a Redux call that's triggering this. And the Redux call set pop-up object properties right here happens to be something that's in the pause reducer. So the pause reducer is going to update the pause store, and that is why we're updating the bug line. So who triggers set pop-up object properties? Well, it turns out the pop-up triggers set pop-up object properties. I guess that kind of makes sense, like pop-up object properties, and the pop-up is the component responsible for previewing. So if we let this run through, what we'll see is every time we were hovering on a token, we were getting a new pop-up. And that pop-up was making a Redux call that was updating the pause state, which was triggering the DebugLine change. So the pop-up, that caused the DebugLine change. Pop-up caused a DebugLine change. Same thing. And that is the story of why previews were getting screwy when you were hovering in the DebugLine. Anyways, hope that was interesting.